Hello everyone, welcome to the Xounds launch night. I'm Cornelia. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and absolutely overcrowding the space already. I'm Cornelia, one of the co-founders of Xounds. Together with Gabor, we created Xounds, and today we finally have the app ready for you all to download via a link that we will send to you after the event. And we are here to celebrate the app, and we're here to celebrate especially the values of Xounds. So these are all around giving people the voice to tell their own stories, and especially about their own intimacy and sexuality, but also exploring whatever feels good for you. So diversity is absolutely key to sexuality, and respecting this is so important, but too often we have not been served enough of that. So with Xounds, we want to break this, and we want to give all of you, and actually everyone in the world, the opportunity to upload and share what they really find sexy, from a conversation to a story to actual sex sounds. And you can stay anonymous, and we make sure that it's safe. So we will go into this a little bit more after our panel talk, and we give you a little demo of the app. But now I'm really happy to be joined by three amazing guests who share very much our values and who are super inspiring to us. So please welcome Anna Ornelas, aka Pimenta Cítrica, who is an erotic storyteller and is also an activist for pleasure, and is also a sex educator with a focus on cliteracy, and you can tell us a little bit more about that afterwards. Welcome, Anna. Then we're joined by Lex Gillon. Lex is a market and especially pleasure market researcher. She's also the founder of the Modality Group, and she's also building ethical AI frameworks for apps just like us. So welcome, Lex. And then last but not least, we're joined by Jason Banks. Jason is a former corporate lawyer who turned a software engineer and is now actually also the co-founder of Eras, FYI. And Eras is a financial well-being app with a focus on queer people. Welcome, Jason. So tonight we will talk about pleasure, what that means to us, but also about tech and how AI and ethical tech really makes the difference. And we will also talk about empowerment, so how important it is to make your own voice heard and represent yourself. So let's begin. As I already mentioned, Xounds is all about sound, like actually listening to things. It's all about fantasy, and it's about the power of imagination. Let's start with you, Anna. Why do you think audio and especially storytelling is so important and makes such a difference when it comes to pleasure?
So many layers to this question. I'll try to be brief. I feel like, well, for me, there is a big component in when we take the reins of eroticism and we bring it to our own storytelling, about subjectifying our sexuality. We talk a lot about objectification, but what does that mean is to be the object of the action, not the subject. And I feel like one of the ways that we can, kind of go against that is to take the reins back and be the subjects of our own sexuality. And I am someone who has been writing erotica since I was 12 and got into audio erotica way before it was a thing. I feel like there is so much power in erotic storytelling because it's putting ourselves as subjects of our own sexuality, and is eroticizing our own desires, not our bodies. I feel like for women, for queer people, for people of color, there is a lot of sexualization that happens in this objectifying space, being the object, of sexuality, and the bodies are sexualized in a way that is cut off from our own desires. And then when you take back that power and you eroticize your desire instead of just your body as a separate entity, there is so much power in that. And I feel like in sounds especially, there is so much room for imagination. And in that imagination, you can learn a lot about yourself, because in the gaps between the sounds, or the things that are not so clear that you have to fill in with your imagination, it's going to be different for every person. And how your imagination works tells a lot about what you like and what you don't like. So it can be also a self-discovery journey when you engage with sexy sounds. I try to make it pretty.
Absolutely, agreeing 100%. Maybe if the two of you want to add to this, absolutely you can do that. And also maybe adding to that, for both of you as well, what does it mean to have representation of other voices and actually spaces where voices that have not been heard so much in the past actually have a space to share their stories for pleasure, but also in general?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's storytelling through the erotic, but there's also the stories we tell ourselves. And I think those are probably even more important than what we consume, right? They shape how we move through the world, how we engage with other people, how we view ourselves just writ large, right? And until recently, I focus on the sex toy space, right? So I track sex toys all around, from loops all the way through to robots, etc. And when you look at the kind of history of sex and sexuality in the markets, it started out as stores and products developed by white men for everyone else, right? Including folks with vulvas, etc. and so forth. Then you kind of started seeing a shift to where kind of more affluent white women will come in and like build products for the rest of us, but who's missing, right? Queer people, not necessarily. There might be some drips and drops throughout here, but like think about trans people, thinking about different kind of genitalia, thinking about black people, brown people, what we need, religious people, and like many people who don't believe that sex is for them. Especially, if you identify as maybe a cis woman, sometimes sex is not for you. If you're in a heterodynamic, it's for him, right? And so thinking about the opportunities for apps, technology, toys, literature to actually help us reshape the narratives that we tell ourselves, I think is a very big opportunity, one that we're currently missing.
Absolutely. Do you want to add, Jason, or will we?
Sure. Actually, I think I have thinking about it now, an interesting, possibly, relationship when it comes to storytelling and sounds in sex, because to me, sound often interrupts sex. So my first sort of encounters with it actually were storytelling. It was me sneaking down to the computer late night as a child and like going to the nifty archives and printing off reams upon reams of like stories written by other people and then reading them. And then if I hear something outside the, I need to turn the light off or hide away. And I think I even still have something like this now when I am self-pleasuring, right? Oh, where are those sounds coming from? Is that my flatmate? Is that my partner? What's going on right now? And so I think there's something funny here. That being said, when I do engage with, like when I go to parties here in Berlin, like the sound is very important to me and like what's happening around me. So I think, for me, these two things are like a kind of a peculiar relationship. But when it comes to other people's storytelling and what voices are not there, if I'm being perfectly honest, I haven't really felt that or noticed it myself, in large part because for a long time I just myself felt excluded from the queer community, or let's say the white mainstream queer community, and so I just sort of accepted what I got, and I think I sort of learned to live with the pain of that. So I have a strong sense of what stories aren't being told because I kind of just accept what I'm being given.
Yeah, exactly, and this is why we need more spaces actually, and we're also really welcoming to all the other amazing creators, and I know there's some people in the room that are also creating apps or creating spaces, communities, to break with this, to break with these kind of taboos. And maybe on this topic, breaking taboos is such a thing that I guess kind of connects our apps, or like financial taboos are in the space just as much as taboos about pleasure, right? And all of us have kind of done this by doing exactly the work we're doing, going into the sex tech space or going into the tech space and doing things differently from the way it's done. Maybe you can share some experiences and trends that you've seen yourself. How did it feel, basically, empowering yourself to do this, taking the step? And maybe on the data part, Lex, maybe you have some data if there's like some actual trends, not just the one that we feel.
Sorry, I need the question again.
Yeah, so basically about breaking taboos, how for you, for example, breaking the taboo in going into the tech space and creating an app with a focus on queer people, which is not the typical tech product either, right? And then for the rest of us, working in pleasure is a taboo breaker.
Very cool, thank you for that. I mean, it has been interesting, right? I mean, money is a taboo topic. Everyone reacts to it. Everyone has feelings about it. It kind of leads perhaps everyone's lives in this room, but there's not much conversation about it. And that's banal to say. We all know this, but it does really affect things. It's particularly interesting, I would say, from the perspective of a startup founder. We are often being told to tell our story about why we got into this space. What is the thing that motivated you? But there's a conflict, because to say that I got into this because I had trouble with money and I couldn't follow my budget and I was running out of cash rapidly and I thought there should be a better way is not what investors want to hear from a founder. And so it's like, how do I balance this, and how do I sort of lead by example and saying, no, this is important to talk about these things. But of course I actually know how important it is to break these taboos. I was recently speaking with one of our former users, and he said that he enjoyed the app experience a lot, but what he really, really enjoyed was when we had our workshop, and that people were able to come and talk. And it was a queer festival being workshop. He felt very comfortable in that space. And this is a person, he's gone to business school, he's been working in and around money, but he still felt uncomfortable talking about it until he was given an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really important. Where the intersection of where money influences pleasure. Like, okay, I'm just gonna do one of these. Raise your hand if money has ever hurt your relationship dynamic. Right? Like, I feel like when I'm broke, I don't want to, can we curse on this podcast? It's like, I'm not trying to have intimacy when I have no money and I'm like struggling with the way of life, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's such a stress factor, right? Oh my God.
You know, and so it's like, for me, like, this money taboo, at the end, man, when you solve one, you solve them all a little bit. But I guess the second part of your question that you're looking at me very, very knowingly and noddingly about is like about the trends. And I'm not going to give you trends, but I am, because that's my livelihood. If you want trends, you can pay me. But I will say something that's a little bit along the lines of this taboo area is looking at how taboo had access, right? About how taboo influences who has access to what. So I have this running theory that one of the trends we saw a couple years ago is that more men's products were coming up, like so things specifically for penises and like cis male presenting folk were coming up, and you're thinking, wait, what now? Like, don't they always get everything? But my theory is that because men were expected to be sexual from a younger age and having physical intercourse, so P&V intercourse, masturbation got tabooed for men, but then women weren't having any orgasms, so then all the products got innovated to solve that problem so that men didn't have to. That's not how I meant to say that, but whatever, we'll roll with it. And so what happened was the innovation that happened around the male space just wasn't there. So they got all these really mangy looking things that are made of like pink plastic and like fake pussies, sorry, but like just like really like gnarly stuff. And then like, you know, we got like really awesome suction vibes and like really fun things. And I was like, ooh, this is nice. So now you're seeing a lot more of that conversation shifting, kind of from a dark place, because the rise in incel culture and some of the conversations around loneliness and the lack of male intimacy, especially like a brotherhood, almost kind of like fraternal intimacy, is like driving the need to have this conversation and innovate in that space. So everything from actual products for physical stimulation, but also companion AI and like looking at things where men can get love that's outside of sex. So looking at intimacy as more than sexual and more as sensual.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the dark side right now, and also, Jason, what you said kind of was talking about how safer spaces are needed, right, to talk about taboo topics, first of all. So maybe let's dive into one of our core values, consent. So we did it in the way that we don't just ask for consent for cookies and to use your data or process your data. We also integrated consent giving before you can upload any audio. So we kind of created a process that stops you from doing something without thinking about it twice. And you actively have to give your consent before you can actually upload any audio. And then also you stay empowered to always withdraw that consent again. So you are the person, and if you record it together with other people, you share basically the power about that data. And when one of you says, I don't want this online anymore, then it's being taken down. So it kind of goes with the weakest, basically. If one person is not happy with it, it shouldn't be online. That's how we deal with consent, but there are so many more things when we created the app that we didn't think about before, and we will have to add so many more features and have to go so much more into all the possibilities to withdraw consent from so much of the data that you're sharing. And it's something we will develop further, but let's talk about the general topic of consent and how foundational it is in real life pleasure, of course, as well. So Jason, maybe you as a tech builder can give us a little bit more how you, maybe also as a lawyer, how your thought is on consent and how to integrate that into an app, and maybe also how you did it.
Sure. So the way, so I can't speak about consent from a lawyer. I was a securities lawyer. It's not related. Okay. But on the tech side, one of the things that we wanted to have a kind of community experience because we wanted to break the taboo around money. But of course, we also don't want people to feel afraid to share their experiences. So when users are asked to share one of their mindfulness reflections with us, there's usually a checkbox that says, can we share it with the community anonymously? So users are allowed to check that box. And that is how we have addressed this, so people can give their experience, tough or not, or joyous, what have you, and then let other users benefit from it, but only when they wanted to share it. And of course, they also have the ability to unshare at any time as well. And that's been our approach to it.
Nice. And Anna, I guess you as a sex educator, but also pleasure activist, and you're also part of a lot of communities. What does consent mean to you from kind of the pleasure side and also from the community space side of things? But I also want you to start talking about your activism and what you do about AI. So no consent is diving into that. So please start with the pleasure and then lead us into the tech and activist world.
Okay, oh, sure. So, consent, so many layers to this, right? Because we start kind of, the very basics of like no means no, and you'd be surprised, like it's still, it takes people by surprise whenever we bring this topic on, which is also completely fair because this is not something that we're taught in school for the most part. So, yeah, we got to start somewhere. But there are so many more layers to consent, especially when you think about sex-positive spaces. So to check in with yourself and the layer of self-responsibility, so you can really think of you can really be able to feel it in your body when it's a yes, when it's a no, when it's a maybe, which also exists. And then going into, well, only yes means a yes, because sometimes it's really hard to say no. And even if you are someone who's experienced and etc., and to get that, and also consent can be withdrawn. There is this very good metaphor that a friend came up with. It's a boundary cat. So you can be scratching your cat's belly for 10 minutes and it's loving it, and on minute 11 it's like meow. And that's kind of like boundaries. They can change at any time, and it's within like, okay, so how can I observe my inner boundary cat? And that it comes also with self-knowledge and getting in touch with your own pleasure, and also thinking ahead, like, okay, so what if something happens that violates my boundaries or someone else's boundaries, where I do something unintentionally, because that can happen. And I think it's also important to think that, knowledge about consent is not going to protect you from mistakes happening all around. But okay, so how can you move on from that, or how can you repair it, or what are you going to do about it? And there are many layers to it, and I think that it's deeply tied to sex education. A sex education that is rooted in so much more than just, well, look at this, don't have sex because you will get pregnant and die. It's about pleasure. It's about engaging with your body. How can you engage with porn, for instance, in a way that it's going to be in your best interest? How can you engage? There is so many layers to this, and I think that it comes with sex education that is sadly failing us, and I don't see so much how that's going to change right now, but I feel like it's the time to take it in our own hands, because we're seeing a conservative wave that wants to demonize sex, and because sex is powerful. And I think that ties in with the activism, because I say that I am a pleasure activist, and there are so many layers to that as well. But in my case, mostly I advocate for people to have more sexual pleasure in their lives. To have more sexual pleasure in their lives, they have to have freedom, they have to have time, they have to have space, they have to have money. Otherwise, that all is going to influence in how you experience your sexuality. But also, there are big tech corporations that are constantly trying to commodify our intimacy, right? So from dating apps and the content moderation on what we share, and when it comes to AI specifically, so just to give some context, I founded an initiative that's called Open Mind AI, which is about advocating for the adult industry, large umbrella, with our policymakers, so that now that we're regulating AI, we have a seat at the table. Because a lot of people want to engage with AI and sexuality, with whether it is, generated porn, or sex bots, or companions, or whatever it is, or even erotica chats. And that's all very fun, and there is so many possibilities for people to have great experiences. The adult industry knows what people are typing into the search bar, and we have like so much insight that we can bring to our policymakers, so we don't fall into this censorship. It's like, okay, let's quash everything. Sex education is the same thing as pornography, let's censor everything that says clitoris. Let's go with the meta blanket over all the content, but also not permissiveness, because we have to think about like how we can engage with that ethically. And there are ways, complicated, difficult, and nuanced to think about, but there are ways. So just to give one anecdote, and I will be done. For instance, when we talk about generated AI generated porn, so deepfake porn, we talk about how that is image abuse, which it absolutely is, but it is on both sides. So the person that usually has their face ripped off, and put on a performance body, and that is completely non-consensual and a deep violation. And also the performer who had not consented to have their body on that image, and that performer is also not getting paid for that. And that's their livelihood, right? But we need to have these difficult conversations in order to bring better solutions to those problems.
Absolutely.
Talk about
Yeah,
this.
of course. No, that's perfect. It's exactly where I wanted to head with our conversation. Actually, is how should AI be regulated? So, of course, the word ethical is always—it's a big word, right? What does it even mean? But let's take it as a kind of AI that is trying to do these violations better, which is less full of stigma, because also when we talk about AI, of course, it's about what data was AI trained with in first place. So again, all the bias that we know from the porn and in the pleasure world is in these kind of models that are being reused for those chats, but also for everything else. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why we at Xounds said, yeah, there is a lot of the like AI generated erotica coming out now, and it's nice, but it's still reproducing everything that was wrong or wasn't really great for everyone in porn. So going back to that porn, just as sex toys have been made from a male gaze most of the time for a wide Western group of men. So when we talk about ethical AI, what does that mean to you? And how would it look like to you in an ideal world? Of course, we are trying to get there, but we're learning. So with Xounds, we see it as, okay, we're releasing this now. We also have AI integrated. We try to inform you and be transparent as much as possible. But we also are open to constantly change things and adapt. And for us, that's one way of dealing with it and making it as ethical as possible. But what is your wish list, basically?
I would say it's 3 pillars for me. So first of all, consensual, and how can we engage with AI in a way that respects consent of everyone involved and also those who are watching or consuming the content. Secondly, that is mindful of marginalized communities. So how all the biases, from the models, the AI models are going to affect sex workers, people of color, and so on and so forth, and how those biases can harm these communities even more. And third, founded on sex education that is liberating and pleasure focused, and that means teaching kids about how to engage with AI and sexuality because they're going to be curious about this, of course. And also throughout, like how you can, if you're opening a platform, if you're offering a service, how to educate in the sense of like, okay, so how can you engage with this in a way that it's going to be good for you, and in a way that engages with pleasure and mindfulness. So those would be my 3 pillars for this.
Yeah, short version, I don't know. I mean, I think the question, so I'm building this framework, right? Like I got this abstract accepted to this conference in September. So I'm still in the early days reading all of the things and trying to be academic again after years out of school. Struggle bus. I think the questions I ask is, the first question I ask is whose ethics, right? Are we talking, because ethics in maybe China might be different than ethics in Malaysia, that might be different than, my ethics as a Black queer person from the Southern US, like, it's also circumstantial, right? Your ethics kind of change. I mean, your values are probably like core, but your ethics sometimes can bend. And then I kind of ask, well, what kind of AI? So are we talking about machine learning? Are we talking about deepfakes? Are we talking about the agents? Are we talking about generative? Are we talking about what? And so like, I'm still pondering these questions. Some of the things I've been consuming that are shaping the way I'm thinking specifically about AI agents is this idea of friction. So Esther Perel, like the renowned sexologist, sex therapist lady. If you don't listen to her podcast, do listen to her podcast because it saved your life. But she talks about how technology is too easy, right? So it's on-demand pleasure, on-demand access to whatever you want. So whether it be like buying a new toy, whether it be buying your food like online, like you have no barriers to consumption. And so when we talk about relationships, that means you have no barriers to consumption, which doesn't mirror real life and real people, right? And so my question becomes, how do we build in friction and accountability into AI agents such that it somewhat mirrors real life and real relationships without reducing your sexual pleasure, but also gives you kind of like pause to understand that like, this would be problematic in real life, right? And you should probably stop and think about, okay, well, should I be doing this? But specifically with agents. With porn, I think it's a little bit more complicated because you're there transactionally. But with agents, I think that there could be some kind of friction built in, but at this point, I don't know what my wish list is, so I'm still kind of diving in.
Fair enough. As do we. So we obviously have certain things that we said, okay, these are really important to us when it comes to AI. But as I said already, we're learning, and that kind of leads me, I guess, to the next point, which is one of the main pillars for Xounds is community. So the way we designed the app is already before we even started designing it, speaking with a lot of people. For us, that community was especially the queer community, but also kind of the Berlin sex positive community. So we went actually out in real life. We talked to a lot of people. We asked them, what do you think about the idea? How would it look like for you to feel safe? And this is also what we've integrated in the app. So whenever you listen to an audio, there's not only the little fire symbol that can give you, like the person's or the creator, kind of a little like heat for that you liked the audio, but there's also always a little flag. So you can easily flag if something kind of glitched through our ears and our AI, and you don't think it should be on the platform. So it's very easy to report, and we're really taking this serious because especially now at the start, we need to learn so much, and we have always been aware we're two people. We're also not really a minority, we're white people. I'm even from Berlin, you know. So, and I've always been so privileged in Berlin to have so many people from all over the world being around me and giving me so much more experience than I could have ever had on my own. So this is really core to Xounds, that we keep learning and keep changing, and also kind of defining what means safe, not just what means safe to us, but what means safe to the community. And we're taking basically all your messages very seriously. So talking to you now, we've kind of touched on those points about representation and how much it matters to actually have a space where you can represent yourself and make your own narratives and voices heard. So my question would be, what does it mean to you to have a way to reclaim a narrative, and also to have a space where you can express yourself without having to fear a certain stigma? Because especially with the topics of finances, but also the pleasure subject, there is so much stigma around it if you start talking about it publicly. So we of course give the option to be anonymous, and yeah, what does it mean to you?
Actually, so I really enjoy this question because when it comes to queer people and money, and perhaps other marginalized groups, but I haven't done the research, there is an interesting, there are just a number of narratives that are problematic, that are held inside and outside. So of course there's like a view, I know that queer people, let's be honest here, gay men have more money. They don't have kids, they're earning earning more than other people, etc. It is true for some, but not true for others, right? So there are these kind of narratives that are problematic. There is the fact that a lot of people, particularly queer people, don't, because of the nature of money shame, don't understand that the things that happen to them, such as maybe frequently getting let go or actually getting paid less than other people, et cetera, are effects of the systemic discrimination. Like, oh, I'm just bad with money. So, well, you're not bad with money. First of all, the system sucks, budgeting sucks, but also there are these actual things that are happening to you when during an economic downturn. Queer people are the first to let go. You just think, oh, maybe I'm the problem. It's not you, it's the system. And so what I and my co-founder, who is standing in the back of the room, have been discovering is that we have to actually do a lot of educating to our target users to be like, this isn't you. You have to deal with it. We're here to help you with that. But this story that you have been telling isn't you, and so you should be reclaiming a different narrative. And we have to do this work of like getting you to sort of see that. And so then there's all this energy for coming to the workshops because they want to have a space. And like, this sort of, what is it? The scales falling from the eyes kind of situation. I'm like, oh, right, this is more. So there's this first like sort of invitation to reclaim, where I'm saying to you, person who's feeling this isn't about you. It's bigger than that. And the money system that we're in expects you to have control that you just don't. But you still have to deal with it. And then from there, hopefully, into everyone else who is telling these stories around queer people and how they spend and use money, that we need to adjust.
Why are you thrusting at me like that? I think mine is more of like a personal reclamation. I think being a startup founder, being a market researcher, you kind of get really into doing things by the book. I got my MBA and they taught you the frameworks and you do the things like this and then you test, you do all this stuff, and so everything's so rigorous, but you kind of lose the frivolous a little bit. And I think that like one thing I'm trying to reclaim is kind of my outward sexuality in terms of life modeling, in terms of photography, in terms of just being a sexual person in the world. Or maybe that's just the wrong phrasing. Maybe it's more like an erotic person in the world, like just like, smelling and tasting and just embracing life, like living. And I think that so often when you get on the founder journey in particular, you just forget about the world. You're just like tired and a little bit grouchy and like, you know what I mean? You're just unhappy. And so I'm trying to reclaim joy, I suppose. Just like,
I love that.
Yeah, because it's like, it's rough, so you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel, okay, I'm going to try to add on. Well, first, I feel like having an app or like just wanting to share more about your sexuality makes sense, because sometimes I have sex and I'm like, this was so good, I wish I could just share it with my friends. Like, that was good work. Like, and I don't know, I wish, this is wishful thinking, I know it's not the time for it, but like I wish that we lived, because I feel like the need to put so many, and I am really glad that we have so many safety measures, but the need to have so many safety measures, because we live in such a sex negative world, in my ideal world, the same way that we share like, oh, I ran however many kilometers today, or look at this really nice recipe that I did. It's like, check, like I had, it was good and I want to share it. And that would not take away from people's reputation. That was, people have sex. It's part of life. The same way that they cook and they work out. I don't know.
Yeah. For your sex calories.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that actually exists already. I've seen a sport app somewhere where you can add your sex time, and then it kind of counts that into the calories.
Oh.
That's so smart.
I've seen that.
Oh my God.
But it's the question, do you want to share that data with that app?
Yeah. And there is also the predatory data harvesting and so on and so forth. I'm building a utopia here, but when we talk about community, I guess a personal anecdote that I can, I think it's the kind of poetic for me, because the way that I got in touch with erotica was so much about community and kind of like finding myself and expressing myself as a queer person in Brazil, confused as fuck, not knowing what was going on with me. I was a very shy kid, and I grew up in a very religious state, so I had so much shame around my sexuality, and I was a very sexual person, and it was very confusing. So I went online, as shy kids do, way back when, and I started reading and writing erotica. And it was not only that, it was a community of people that read and wrote erotica and would post, and I would make friends. Like my first girlfriend I met because we were writing My Chemical Romance erotic fan fiction together. And that brought me a sense of community that really pulled me in and like made me feel like I had a place in the world. Not only me, but my sexuality, my fantasies, my desires, the things that brought me joy, And to see that, like kind of seeing you talk about it makes me so happy to see that there are other initiatives, because there was so lacking when I was a teenager, there were so few spaces. I'm so grateful that I found it, but there were so few spaces, and I feel like if we had more positive community spaces like that, you know, communities that celebrated sexuality, communities that celebrated, that brought people together to be creative, then maybe there would be less of, you know, online communities that come together to spew hate. So I feel like this is a very positive change.
Yeah, absolutely, agreeing totally. So as it's getting hotter and hotter in here, I do realize, let's start wrapping up actually. You mentioned already about the community, how important it is and how important it was for you to feel safe. And now I feel like we've all found a good community, like us sitting here, at least in the front, feeling safe enough to share things like this and actually living our fantasies, but also living our dreams when it comes to business. So one last advertisement for Xounds is that everyone who has a business, we will be free, but we offer the opportunity to advertise. So if you want to advertise in a space where especially you can talk about all the taboo topics that we just mentioned without having fear to be censored, talk to us. And we will let you know how to do it and how it will sound like to advertise on Xounds. And so I want to give the three of you the opportunity to advertise your projects or the next big thing that you're planning at the moment to end this panel.
When you said it's getting warm, I thought you were like, oh, let's all take our clothes off. I was getting excited.
It's just so hot, you know?
Okay. So, yes, you can follow my work on Instagram. It's Pimenta Cítrica. So I create a lot of content around sex education, sexual health, erotica, etc., etc. I also do workshops on erotica, clitoracy, intimacy, in which you can learn how to use these tools and translate them into having a better sex life. I'm also a content creator. I write, I create all kinds of media, and on the 22nd of May, we are going to launch, there is going to be a series of workshops here at this very space, which is going to be the Clit Mastery. So it's going to be workshops for clit owners and clit lovers to come and learn about the anatomy, whether you have a clit or you just love clits. And also there is going to be hands-on workshops for couples. So 22nd of May is World Clitoris Day. We're going to announce everything, so stay tuned on Xounds social media. I hope to see you all there.
Yes. Yeah, there will be
How do you follow that? That's amazing. I run a data consultancy. Like, nothing interesting is happening. I mean, awesome. Hi, you can follow me on Instagram at Lex Gillon. We are currently we're prepping 3 research projects, one on kink, one on porn, and one on women over 40, because relevant. And yeah, so stay tuned for those surveys and like projects to come out. And we are in the process of building a pleasure agent, which would be basically a discovery tool for finding resources for sexual pleasure. And I am, in my personal life, building an ethical framework for AI or intimate AI use cases. So, yeah, lots of things going down. So stay tuned.
amazing.
First of all, just want to say thanks for having me up here as the sort of, I was going to say odd man out, which obviously kind of stands out its own way, but I meant from a money perspective. Again, my name is Jason Banks. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Eras.fyi, that's ERAS.fyi. So we talked a bit about it so far. We are focused on helping people who are stressed and stuck with money move forward with structured guidance, care, and social impact. We do have an app that you can check out or join the waitlist. New version coming soon, and that is, I think, everything for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here with me today. So thank this amazing panel. I enjoyed it so much talking to you, and I could talk to you for the rest of the evening, and I will maybe. But all of you, of course, as well, come up to us, ask us questions. I don't think we have much time for questions. Give me a sign.
Some of them
Okay, so maybe we can take 3 questions if any of you has a question.
So right now, thank you, it was really interesting. So right now you can search for a picture and you can find people, and I'm imagining really soon you can search for voices, and so you won't be as anonymous anymore, I guess. How are you thinking about this?
So with sounds, we are definitely aware that this is getting better and better. So it's not integrated in the first beta version, but what we're working on at the moment is very authentic filters for voices. So again, this is kind of a better way, we've all heard like audio filters already, and some of them are quite good. Some of them are quite disturbing when it comes to the pleasure field. So we're working on integrating the better filters and actually making them more authentic, and even to really use your voice and just kind of tone up or down certain levels of it. And then basically you can still record your own audio, but then you will afterwards have the opportunity to edit it. So that way you can make it even more anonymous. And then otherwise, we also are working on a way to integrate some kind of audio markers into the audios. So that way, kind of similar how they do it with images, protect them from being used without consent, that we can integrate some kind of it's like kind of like a stamp or like watermark in the audio, and you can't hear it when you just listen to it, but when you want to reproduce it, it kind of annoys people, and you can also kind of track that it's actually copied, obviously without consent, and then that way it's a violation of your rights, and you can, do legal actions against it. Anyone else?
Hello. I have a question regarding the flag function you talked about. Is there any step before uploading any audio? Do you check the audio before it is actually uploaded, or is the flag function the only way to get rid of flag it?
I won't answer your question now, because just after we finish with the panel, we will have a little demo of the Xounds app, and then I will show it to all of you. Okay, anyone else? Otherwise, I would like to ask you for a huge applause for our amazing guest. I'm so happy that you are here today. Thank you.